All right, guys, let's get this little project started here. So basically, the first line that come into Montana was built in 1866, and it came up from Salt Lake, Utah, and went into Virginia City. Basically, that line was built with wood blocks, ram's horns, which the telegraphers at that point in time used to complain about when they'd get a bad wet snowstorm or a bunch of rain, it would actually short across and drain the batteries at the telegraph office and stuff. This was a common occurrence in Salt Lake and especially in Virginia City, because Virginia City at that point in time was the end of the line. Now in 1867, they pushed the line from Virginia City, Montana, on up into Helena. And the weird thing about that particular line is that we have searched for 30 plus years trying to find an insulator that was used on that line. And we have yet to this day never located a part, piece, or anything on that line. Now I know in 1874 that there was Brooks ram's horns used in downtown Helena. And you'll see, well, I've got a picture here, basically up in the upper left there. That's downtown Helena in 1874. So it's just one of those bizarre things, like you would think somebody would have found something along the line there and stuff, but so far nothing's ever showed up. From 1867, 1868, they pushed the line from Helena on up to Fort Benton, Montana, and that line has used CD735 Mulford Biddles, which is fairly common with the Collins line in Canada. The line, after a few years when replacement lines or insulators were needed, they did replace a lot of the busted or broken Mulford Biddles with the CD136.7 Boston Bottle Works, which a lot of folks refer to as the military Boston. So the difference between it is it has no inner skirt and it's only 3 segmented threads. A lot of the telegraphers and repairmen used to complain a lot about the lines getting pushed over by buffalo, and that was a very common occurrence from Helena up through Fort Shaw into Fort Benton. So then we get into the Helena area, and the line was built in 1871 that ran from Helena to Bozeman, and that line was completely constructed with the CD27.1 Beaver Falls W.U patterns. It's been actually quite a substantial amount of those insulators found locally. And believe it or not, to this day, once in a while, one will show up here in town at a garage sale. So we always watch when we hit the garage sales, because, you know, I know Ron personally has probably found 4 or 5 at different garage sales over the last 15, 20 years. So they do pop up and stuff. So other than that, you know, that's pretty much the extent of our early, you know, telegraph and stuff. Montana's more notably famous for its power line insulators and stuff, which I'll turn that over to Ron and Justin. So anyway, if you guys like, I'll turn it over to Ron.
Okay, this is Gary, who is an engineer over in Butte for the company. He was a designer of Muncie, Cooley of the sets of purple bells. He was involved with that design too. This is a colorized photo that Doug did with AI to show basically how that person would have looked at that point in time. And then on the right there is a basic design of how the Muncie was mounted to the top of a pole. And you'll see on the right at the bottom of the pin where, and it's in the pole there, there's a kind of a little channel there that they put to get water to come out away from the base of the pin, keep it drier. Those can still actually be found if you find an old pole top. They actually did that goofy thing, so that actually happened. Here's a description of the Muncie where they felt there's a weak point of stress at there. So on long spans, like you're saying, the coolie hat was used on some of those long spans. We'll show you some pictures of those down the road here. The early shot of the Canyon Ferry powerhouse, this is where the double line that went to Butte actually originated at. Again, that's right at the turn of the century, right at 1900. This is how it looked. One of those dams at the Canyon Ferry was not built properly, and the water worked its way underneath and blew the thing out. I can't tell you the exact date, but it blew the whole thing out. They had to rebuild the Canyon Ferry Dam. Okay, this is a picture of this double wide Muncie line with Muncies and coolies on it. I believe this is actually coming out of Canyon Ferry Dam out there straight up the hill from where the dam is at, and there's some kind of phone line on the other side. I think this has been colorized too. Okay, this is actually a different portion of the line that was over actually south of Boulder, and this is a big long flat there that I've been across that thing in the spring and summer, and it's very swampy, and they must have had a real rough time falling. And this is a corduroy road of wood that they laid down so they could their trucks could follow that, or not trucks, but the wagons that they could kind of service that thing, and it comes up kind of a big rock pile before it drops down the other side to Butte. The other side's part of that dam again. This is a diorama that's out in Townsend that shows their idea of how it looked like when they were stringing a single Muncie line. It's kind of imaginary, but it shows you probably what it looked like, their wire truck, their horses and wagons and linemen trying to put this stuff up. And it's kind of a cool diorama out there. This is just showing how those double lines, the engineering diagram of how they set it up with some of the distances that they wanted them apart, and the height of things between the conductors you can see on that one. This is some more technical, just talking about how far it was to Butte from Canyon Ferry. It's like 63 miles, I guess it says there. Spans of 110. And there was a short line from Hauser Lake to East Helena. That, I believe, used porcelains, 935s, I think. Anyhow, 130, quite a distance there. Again, the same kind of diagram of the distances between the poles and thing there. Okay, this is actually something Doug put together that shows where Canyon Ferry originally came out of Canyon Ferry, and then Hauser Lake Dam took over after the dam thing broke apart, and they couldn't use it then. So then it came out of Hauser. Shows this was a double wide A and B line all the way through these spots. And out of Boulder, you can see the last section out of Boulder, that was all mountainous through trees and stuff, and why it was such good insulator hunting, actually. Here's some of the lines we're going to talk about. The A and B line that's listed on there that Doug had. The Porphyry Dike line, which is the one that came out of the Jefferson City area and went, I don't know, about 14 miles up to the actual Porphyry Dike mine. And we're going to have a photograph of what that looked like at that time. Then we've got Justin's one, the Madison River. It's the Madison River line. The other one down there, the red one, the Granite Creek line, that was an all Muncie line that went headed over to some placer mining there. And then there's a tap, it says Virginia City Cochrane line. So there's a real short tap there that had Cochrane's on it there. Justin's hunted that one. I've never been on that one. I did try to find it a lot of times though. Here we go, some of the pin types. The Muncie pin is shorter on the crossarm ones and a little taller, like about a couple inches taller on the pole top. They drilled those down into the top of the pole of the thing. So that must have been quite a job to drill that into the pole, and then ran a bolt sideways through it to hold it in place, and then drilled this other hole to let the water that seeped around that side of that pin in there, just let it go out, so supposedly stop the rusting or rotting of that pin. Shows several types of pins, most of them oak. There's some locust treated pins later on, I think. These oak pins are, I mean, they age, but they're actually beautiful if you clean them up sometimes too. Okay, here's just a color of some of the things you'd find on the line. Some really pretty blues. Most all Muncies on the line were aqua. In a couple of locations you've got your green aqua swirled. Some of them can be pretty extensive. Most all that we know of are all embossed number 76. I have no clue why that those are the ones that had all the amber and green in them, but that's the way we were for as much I can tell. There may be a few of the just Muncie type ones, but I've never seen one. This is just an actual picture of a few of the Muncies had absolutely no embossing on the back. They're completely smooth. From what I can tell, they're very early in the production on the A and B line. I haven't found them on any other line. The Muncie 76s, you'll find maybe one in about 40 or 50 of those. The unembossed, maybe 1 in 100, you know. Here's some details of the hemigrate details of showing what they looked like. 55,000 volts is what their limit was on those, but my understanding is they were running higher than that at the end of the usage of these things on that double wide line to Butte. Okay, this is a shot of a pole out of Boulder. There was a single, mostly Muncie line that went out of Boulder, Montana, which is about 30 miles to the south of us here, went over the old ghost town of Elkhorn, Montana. They tore this down about 7-8 years ago, something like that. I had the contract to get the insulators off this tear down. Here's a shot of it. This is looking down a little hillside there. In the very back part, if you follow kind of where the line goes, that is actually Boulder, Montana in the background there. And I had a four-wheel drive up there while they were tearing these down, and I could be right there and pick up the insulators, so they didn't throw them in trucks and bring them back to a shop, and I'd pick them up there. I had it written into the contract to get these right on the job site. Here's a shot of one of those poles on that line. It's got actually six insulators, maybe. I don't think it's 7. This looks actually towards the town of Elkhorn in the background there, kind of springtime sagey stuff that this line went through at that time they shot this. Okay, here's a better shot of that one. It is too. A lot of times on the A and B one that went to Butte, they had a short little cross arm like this, but they had 3 insulators on the top, and then the double wide cross arm with 4 total on the lower part. There's a close-up of it that looks up towards Elkhorn. This is kind of a neat picture. I think they might have used it on a magazine one time. We're down here kind of in the lower levels where it's spring, but in the mountains, Elkhorn Mountains there, it's pretty snowy looking. Kind of a cool shot. Here's another shot on the same line. Just these things are getting in kind of rough shape, and they start tearing them down, and the insulators bent over the cross arm, and some of them would even come out of there and fall down where they were taking them out. Oh, here we go. This is off of that line that went over to the Elkhorn line. And what happens sometimes that these insulators will kind of just pop up out of the ground for some unknown reason when they're around where these Muncies are at. So these have just popped up out of a meadow there, you can see.
With no help?
No help whatsoever. They just popped up. If you're on the field and you find some of these, if they're only 7 inches wide, they won't have this stem like a mushroom. They won't have that. And so you want to leave those alone and kind of let them grow till they get full 9-inch size. This is another shot of the Elkhorn line that's headed, this is headed straight east before it makes a sharp left-hand turn to go up to Elkhorn. The turn went Mexico to Elkhorn, they stopped using Muncies and they used porcelain suspensions. Okay, this is a shot on that, again, that Hauser Dam A and B line. This might be fairly early, maybe 70s somewhere, 80s. I think this picture might be just a random shot of that a pole on that line. This is, when the line was still up, this is a shot going towards the Boulder Hill, as it's called, going from Helena to Boulder, where there's a small pass over there, and this is an open field that this line went through, and a good shot of how it looked as a double wide line. Another lower shot is showing another pole on there. And here again, you see this line is still up, and that Muncie or Cooley, whatever it is just about to fall off the edge of that thing and break away from the pole. Here's another shot of that other, looking the opposite direction back towards Helena on that double wide line. Most of the you'd find in the straight sections like this, you'd find coolie hats almost extensively used on those in original constructions. Of course, there's lots of damaged ones where you can see on the right or left that they replaced them, and they're porcelains and stuff. But the original, from what I could see, most of the stuff that had been there a long time was the coolie hats straight line, and then they hit a corner and they'd have 7 Muncies on a pole in that corner. Here's the same area. They make pretty good lamps, as you can see in the distance there too. Okay, this is a shot of that line that we were just looking at. This is when they tore it down. They started this tear down in about, I'm thinking September maybe. Again, I had the contract on this line with the power company to get the insulators. That's the corner of my truck there that's just to the left. And you know, like I say, told people, if you didn't go to this show, you're left out in the cold like these Muncies and Coolies. So I don't know what to tell you. There's a good crew to work with, though. They were really careful taking stuff down. Okay, here's a bunch of them stacked up next to the fence that they had pulled down in that one section we'd seen earlier, a bunch of pieces that I was forced to load up and take home. This is a little closer to Helena. You can see a cross arm that's tilted sideways. Again, this stuff is not in too good a shape at this point in time. But this is another section of the line, a little double wide shot closer to town. This is right over the Boulder Hill itself, where again you can see the double line kind of a little bit in the winter areas. It's going over the pass there. Okay, this is actually from Boulder to Butte section. Shows you exactly how those double wide cross arms and 3 Muncies on the top, so a total of 7 pieces on this pole, and it's a corner pole. That's where it turned, and that's how the construction was done there. Here's a little bit closer shot of that, the line construction, and some early journal information about the Muncie again. Here's a little bit of a long distance shot across the valley, little gulch there is another corner pole with that setup. Okay, this shot is actually, this is across the top of a pass that went, and it's headed down to Butte now. So it's going through, this is after it's been torn down. I was hunting it after it had been torn down through this area. And it goes all the way into Butte. But you can see the line cuts, pretty easy to see, so you could find it and search either side of the line for insulators that might have been left behind. A little bit lower in that area, closer to the flats and stuff like that on that same little spot. This one here is looking the opposite direction, up towards the pass where that line went across, and you see the very top of it there is full of rock and stuff like that. That's the very top of that pass. And that's one of 2 locations that they used spliced poles on. And those poles are still laying across that rock when I was hunting this thing, and they were huge. They must have been 100 foot long, and they spliced the wood together and then banded it with metal bands. So just a monstrously large pole that they set in there into rock, and how these guys could do that through that stuff, it's just mind-boggling. I think there's one other location that had those spliced poles on this whole thing, this whole 60-mile thing. Okay, this is same line, not as far up towards that rock here, just shooting it down there when the line was still up, showing where the first side of the line on the left-hand side had been torn down. I'm guessing mid-50s, early 50s, maybe, from looking at how much stuff. And they would hide these, I suppose, just along the line for replacements, so they wouldn't have to pack them in or something for the other side. But this area where one side was down is great hunting. Okay. This old guy that's here is my dad on Trail 90. Came with me on a bunch of these safaris that on the same line, and kind of a little further up there in the flatter meadow area. So we took trail bikes up there, and then would box them. If we found anything, we'd box it up and then put it on the trail bike and hunt it back, because there's no road. It's just a trail up through there. Here we have an early day lineman in his cabin there. He looks to have a drink in his hand. Hard to say what it is. Well, if it's a lineman, it's probably got alcohol in it. But it's actually me, I guess. Kind of an old cabin that would have been along the line. It might have been service cabin, something that they could stay if they had to. Here's another shot of another one that was possibly used that way. Okay, here we have the Granite Creek line that came out of the Madison River Power Company that went over to some of the dredges and also to Virginia City, Montana. Shot of one of them. Same type of construction. They used all Muncies on this line. Doug worked with me on this line. I had the contract on this line. Doug came along, and we just, I guess it's about a 100-mile trip to go over there, catch up with these lines. This is a great crew that's on this line. They did everything they could to save these Muncies, even when they're in rough locations where they had a hard time getting a bucket truck up. They were good to work with, and they would try and get in there so they could save the insulators, which that wasn't always the case. But if they couldn't, they chainsawed the pole down. And of course, as you would expect, there's almost nothing left when you chainsaw a pole down with these kind of insulators. Here's another. This may be Doug's pictures. Is he gone? Anyhow, I think Doug shot a lot of these. There might be some of mine. Here's again that same line showing it going through. This is a drier area going into Virginia City, so it's more sagebrush and scrub brush and stuff going through there. This was carrying very little. It was only servicing farms and some ranch houses through this area. So just before they tore it down, it wasn't much electrical going through it. Doesn't encourage me to go up and get them, though. Here's a good shot of that era there. I think Doug got that too. Here's another little close-up of them. Kind of gives you the feel of what they were going through in that area. This is Doug, I think, again, shooting it directly down the line from a little ridge or something like that. It's kind of a cool shot. Early on, early in my career, I was up there with my folks and shot these things in the sunlight, and they looked just like lamps going down these things, just bright and shiny. Another shot from the same line. Okay, this is a shot of apparently one of two known Pittsburgh embossed script multis that was on the lower section of this line where they had porcelains, multi-part porcelains on. That's when it's still up there. Here's a shot of the actual insulator with its embossing. It's the only one we found on there, is this one thing. I think Mr. Rhodey owned that for a while. Seems like it. Here's a shot of the lower end of that line with just the regular multis on there. Here's a really pretty, I don't know if you call it pumpkin type piece. I don't think it's embossed or anything on that one, but it's a beautiful piece. The rest of them are just pretty ugly brown chocolate stuff. Harry Cochran, the patent on that insulator is, was August 15, 1916. It's on the caps of those things. This is an imaginary photo of what that line that would have looked like, but it is how they were. There's a Muncie on the top of these. This is the one that went from Corbin Wicks area, which is a bit bit south of town here, and up to the Porphy Dyke line. That's exactly how they looked. There were two suspension Cochrans underneath, hooked up underneath the thing, and two of Hemiray number 4s, CD27.1 I think. Okay, this is a picture of the Porphy Dyke middle line that this thing went to. I bought a mining journal thing, just a short mining journal, and it had a picture of this exact mill and identified where it was at and everything else. And Doug went through AI and had colorized, so it's probably really pretty close to the texture and the look of it. It really probably looked very similar to this. You can see a giant transformer that they had up there with the two things on the top of it. I found pieces of the 10-high Cochrane switch tower things up there, so we know that they were there. There were some tall, narrow pins. The photograph is hard to see in that area, but it looked like that's what those were on that end of the line. But so I know they were there, and we think that's probably what it looked like. Really a cool photograph. Again, just a diagram of how the Cochrane actually looks. Patent date on the top metal part, not on the bottom. They originally had cork gaskets between all of the bells. There's two styles of bells, one with a straight inner skirt and one with a curved inner skirt. And a wire clamp, you can see on the left-hand one where the wire clamp fit in that on the bottom of it. This has been a dredge that I think this was around, was that around Virginia City? Yeah, I can't make it out.
Looks like Elder Gulch.
Yeah, that would have been Virginia City then. Yeah, that would have been. And this here again, a little bit closer look up of how those were. And I know this is accurate because I hunted that line, and you could find the remains of these poles and see. And I found some of the 295s that were up there too, and the short cross on there. So that is exactly how it looked up there. Here's a shot showing the 6-bell Cochranes there. The next one is a 10-bell. As far as I know, I've never found any of the 10 bells actually pictured or in usage anywhere. The only one, there was one assembled and sent in a crate over to Spokane, Washington. It's in my display now over there, but it had the original pin. It hasn't been weathered or anything, and it's clear, so it was inside all the time. So I don't think they ever used the 10 highs anywhere, that smaller bell. The one there on the right, that's the bigger 10-high switch structure Cochrane. That was on the lower end of Corbin Wicks area had that there originally. There were 9 of them on that thing. I got there in about 1969 or something, and they'd all been taken off. There were some of these pins, some broken glass of these things on the ground. I finally heard about how that happened. A lineman friend of ours was trying to lower one down, and the rope broke and the whole thing fell to the ground. But anyhow, a number of those were saved, so they did end up in the hobby, fortunately. As far as I know, none of the ones up at the actual mine place survived. Here's a description of the two skirt sizes on the smaller bells, the straight and the curved one. A little accurate picture showing you exactly what they look like. Some diagrams of the sizes and stuff. These are actual shop drawings that the power company did on these things too. Shows the caps and all the description in the shop drawings that they must have sent off to have them made according to these drawings. I don't know if Cochrane's on the listing that or not. Okay, here we're seeing that clamp I talked about that fit into the bottom of the thing there, and it had a little cotter pin that held that on there, and then the wire clamped in between those, you can see those two bolts. They clamped it down in there, and that's how it was attached to the bottom of these things. Okay, this is an imaginary look at what that Bertha switch down at the lower end around Corbin Wicks area, what this probably looked like. This is a creation that Doug did based on information I told him, probably talking to Sam, what this thing actually, this structure was up when I was hunting, but like I say, there's no glass on it, and it kind of looked like this anyhow, and there was just like I say, a few empty pins that I unbolted and took home at that time. A little bit of description of what the top and the bottom metal plate was. The top actually had a switch type of thing that was solid copper in it that probably a knife switch went into. It kind of gives you the details of the sizes and stuff, how they looked on the 10-high large bell racks. They were splined like this, and then a bolt went through the top and the bottom to hold the top and the bottom to the wood pin, which had these strange holes, and I have no idea why. Here's a picture of the one with the switch structure on the top that was copper, solid copper, and how that looked, and that was splined down on that wood piece. Again, here's another look at what you could have expected to see. We have absolutely no shots of Cochrane bells on the line. We may have some leads to look at some photographs, but we don't have any evidence of actual pictures of the line. And another shot of the porphyry deck line. Okay, this is was in Harlowton, Montana. It was a big switch, kind of substation type of thing. I had been in this building and actually went to talk to people that were there. I didn't track anybody down. Never saw these clear Cochranes up in the roof of this building. Never occurred to me that's what they were. But those all were saved. This building no longer exists. But all those were saved by linemen in that area, and they're all clear. So it was fortunate that it was late when this building was torn down, and they saved them. Another shot of the top of that building. It's really high up there. Was there 9 of them in there, it looks like? Okay. Okay, this here is an oddball porcelain style Cochrane. They're put together differently. There's 2 known examples of this thing as far as we know. They're found in the central Montana crossing. 8 bell things rather than the 6. Doug Risher is the proud owner of one of these just recently. They're a very cool innovation anyhow to have one. Pretty rare. Here's some shots of what the caps look like. 1 or 2 known examples. Justin Martin, you got one of those? Justin Martin has the other one. Cool piece though, very unusual, and that's all we know about. We just know. Oh, here we go. This is the Elkhorn Provo line and my dad here. This is we went and hunted this thing, and some of my high school buddies had beaten me up there on this line, and they found most of the provos that were still on it. This is the only pole I found with them still on it, and some, I think they're around 106 Duquesnes unembossed there. There's a shot of that. I don't know if Dad liked going on these things, but he wasn't much on antique stuff at all. But he had fun going on these trips. This guy, boy, I could tell him something at that point in life, let me tell you. And the dog, he's got a dog there. Same pole as the last pole. That made a corner pole right there. It turns, and it just wasn't much after that. It's headed towards the Elkhorn Mill. Here's another shot down the line on a different position with Dad in the background. Okay, here we are looking at another section of that line cut down there. Boy, there just isn't much to see where it went, so you really had to pay close attention. Used number 2 provos. They weren't light aqua. They were all just plain aqua, double dated provos, and that's the Duquesne that was used on that. No embossing. Another shot of Dad on the line going the opposite direction of these other ones, I think. But you can see the line cut, but boy, there isn't a lot there that you can make it out easily. Okay, the line went right through this giant rock pile, and you don't think that was fun to go through. And they'd set a pole in the center of that thing, I think, too, as I recall. A real bugger. Okay, here we are to the Madison line, to Butte, Montana. Justin's going to cover this one, and it's pretty fascinating construction on this thing.
All right, so this is the Madison plant. This was built around 1900. And it ran from the Madison plant, which is down by Ennis, and it went to Butte. This is the second generation. The first line was the all-wood construction where they mortised a square hole through the pole, and then they slid the crossarm through the middle of the pole and held it in with wood dowels. There was no nails, bolts, or anything in the pole. It was all wood construction. But this is the tower lines that use 2 of those big boat tail GE Hewletts and then a wood stick. And that's what the dead ends would look like. I remember when I hunted this line the original time, I would find those Hewletts and the wood sticks up there. They'd be all smashed and broke to hell, but they'd be up there. And I didn't realize at the time that they used the wood sticks and stuff until we found some pictures of it.
Was there metal on the wood sticks or just?
Yeah, this is the tower line. This is the later one that they built. It was 100 kV. But yeah, it had little metal ends on the wood sticks. That's what the end of the wood stick would look like, and that's the original conductor shoe. And this is that all wood construction. This was the original line that was 40,000 volts that they built over from the Madison plant into Butte. But it had that long 28-inch pole top pin that went down through the middle of the pole, held in with a wood dowel. And then the cross arms had the smaller 19-inch pins.
How long were the cross arms?
The cross arms were 10 feet long, and that cross arm was mounted probably 8 feet down from the top of the pole.
Yeah, that's about right.
There's another one of it that's been crashed into the woods. There's a broke Provo with one of the ridge pins. That was one of them that was standing still in the forest that we saved that pole. I was able to save 3 of these complete poles. I saved quite a few of the tops and a lot of the crossarm ends, but only 3 of the poles were good enough that I could save. And I think one of them resides in Colorado. One of them went down to that Quantum Museum in Texas now, and the other one is in the Butte Power Company shop. There's another picture of the 2 pins. That had to have been hell for the lineman. I'd imagine if a tree looked at that line, that pin broke. This is a colorized picture of when they were building the line. I remember I read a job summary. I think Myron Buck, who ended up being a CEO of the power company, wrote, and he talked about they built that line. It cost like $100,000 to build that line, and they could have got it done a little cheaper, but it was a cold winter and the hay burners burned a lot of hay. This is where that line would have ended up. This was the original steam plant in Butte. This building still exists today. I mean, it doesn't have all the cool insulators and stuff on it. It's actually a mechanic shop for the Northwestern Energy, but the building is still there. This is just a picture of various lines in the state and what insulators were used on them. There you go. Doug Rusher will answer any questions you guys have. But I won't.